Some people think you need money to perform miracles. But sometimes, all it takes is one plate of food, one stubborn mother, and a stranger everyone else calls mad. Stay with this story till the end, and then tell me if you still believe kindness is a weakness. The dust rose like a whisper that morning, curling around the edges of the dirt road where Mama Ife had set up her small food stall for the 1,000th time. The sun had barely crested the horizon when she heard it, the low rumble of engines, too many and too powerful for this forgotten corner of the world. She looked up from her pot of jollof rice, her wooden spoon frozen mid-stir. 4 black SUVs appeared at the end of the road, their polished surfaces gleaming like dark mirrors against the humble backdrop of rusted zinc roofs and weathered wooden stalls. They moved in formation, slow and deliberate, as if the vehicles themselves understood the weight of the moment they were carrying. People stopped what they were doing. A woman carrying tomatoes on her head paused. Children who had been chasing a deflated football stood still. Even the roosters seemed to fall silent. The SUVs came to a stop, and fine dust settled around them like a shroud. Doors opened simultaneously, and men in dark suits stepped out, their eyes scanning the crowd with sharp precision. They positioned themselves around one particular vehicle, and the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Then he emerged. A man in his 50s, with silver threading through his hair and a suit that cost more than every structure on this street combined. But it was not his wealth that made people gasp. It was his face, the raw, unguarded emotion written across it. The way his hands trembled as he held something close to his chest, a torn photograph. He stepped forward, and his voice broke through the silence like thunder. "Where is the woman who fed my son?" The words hung in the air, and Mama Ife felt something cold run down her spine. Her grip on the wooden spoon tightened until her knuckles paled. The billionaire's eyes swept across the crowd, desperate, searching. When they landed on her faded wrapper, her modest stall, her weathered hands, something in his expression shattered and rebuilt itself in the same breath. "You," he breathed, and his voice cracked on that single syllable. "It's you." Mama Ife could not move, could not speak, could only stand there as the weight of 2 years collapsed into this single, impossible moment. But to understand what brought this powerful man to his knees in the dust of a roadside stall, we must go back. Back to when Mama Ife was simply a widow fighting to survive. 2 years earlier, the sun had been just as unforgiving. Mama Ife woke before dawn every morning because survival demanded it. Her small room behind the food stall barely fit a bed and cooking corner. The roof leaked. The walls let in the cold. But it was hers, and it sheltered the only person who mattered more than life itself, her 8-year-old daughter, Adaizi. Widowed 4 years now, she carried her grief quietly. Her husband had left her nothing but love, and love did not pay for school fees, medicine, or the rice she sold to customers who sometimes paid and sometimes promised to pay later. Every morning, she carried water from the well 3 streets away. She started her fire and began cooking. By sunrise, the aroma of her food would already be drifting through the streets. Some days were good. Most days were hard. She counted coins with trembling fingers, trying to stretch what little she had into something resembling survival. Her landlord was not patient. Every month, he appeared with the same cold expression, the same extended palm, the same threat. Pay or leave. The market women whispered about her. A widow with a child and no family. It was a story they had seen before. But Mama Ife did not break. She bent under the weight of exhaustion and worry, but she did not break. At night, she would sit outside her stall and whisper prayers to a God she was not always sure was listening, She would ask for strength, for provision, for just one more day. And somehow, that grace always came. Not in abundance, but in just enough. It was the end of a particularly brutal day when she first saw him. The sun had set, leaving behind a sky bruised with purple and orange. She was packing up when something made her pause. A figure curled beside the open gutter at the edge of the road. At first she thought it was a pile of rags, but then it moved, a slight shift, a tremor, and Mama Eve felt her heart clench. It was a young man, or what remained of one. He was thin in a way that spoke of weeks without proper food. His clothes hung in tatters, caked with dirt. His hair was matted, his skin ashen. He sat with knees pulled to his chest, staring at nothing with the vacant gaze of someone who had seen things no person should see. A few passers-by noticed him and quickly looked away. A woman pulled her child closer. An old man muttered about madness and spirits. The whispers had already started. "He's been there for days. Don't go near him. He's possessed. Mad. Completely mad." Mama Eve heard them all. The smart thing would be to pack up and go home. But her feet carried her toward him instead. He flinched violently when he sensed her approach, scrambling backward until his back hit the wall. His eyes went wide with terror. His hands came up to protect his face, and she saw scars on his wrists, thin, pale lines that told a story she could not yet understand. "It's all right," she said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." He did not respond. His breathing was ragged, like a cornered animal. She moved slowly, placing a container of rice and beans on the ground between them. "You look hungry. Please, eat." For a long moment, he did not move. Then, slowly, his hand reached out. He ate like someone who had forgotten what food tasted like. Tears streamed silently down his face, and he did not bother to wipe them away. When the container was empty, he looked up at her. His lips moved, forming words that came out as barely a whisper. "Thank you." And then he was gone, melting into the shadows like a ghost. He returned the next day, and the day after, and the day after that, always at the same time, just as the sun began to set. He never asked for food. He simply stood at a distance until she beckoned him closer. She learned to prepare extra portions. A plate of rice here, a wrap of beans there. Sometimes, when she had a good day, a piece of fish. He accepted everything with the same quiet gratitude, the same tears he seemed incapable of controlling. He never gave his name. Never stayed longer than it took to eat. But slowly, he began to change. On the 5th day, he started sweeping. Mama Eve arrived at her stall to find him already there, using a worn broom to clear the dust from around her cooking area. He did not acknowledge her. He simply swept, his movements methodical, as if this small act of service was the only language he knew. She said nothing. She simply began cooking, and they worked in companionable silence. The villagers noticed, "Mama Eve, have you lost your mind? That boy is dangerous. You're feeding a madman with food you can barely afford." She heard every word, and she ignored them all, because she saw what they could not see. Behind the dirt and silence, she saw a human being. Broken, perhaps, but human. "Mama, why do you keep feeding him?" Adaisi asked one evening. Mama Eve considered the question carefully. "Because he is hungry, and I have food. Because someone somewhere is probably searching for him, praying that a stranger will show him kindness." She took her daughter's hand. "We help because we can, my child, not because we have plenty." She learned to read him the way one learns to read the sky for signs of rain. She learned that certain sounds made him flinch. The backfire of a motorcycle, any voice raised in anger. She learned he could not bear to be touched unexpectedly. One afternoon, A customer raised his voice at her, angry about a portion size. It was an ordinary conflict, but the stranger was not prepared. The moment the customer's voice rose, the young man dropped his broom. His body went rigid. His hands flew to his ears, pressing hard, as if trying to block out sounds only he could hear. And then he was on the ground, curled into a ball, rocking back and forth, his mouth moving in silent words. The customer stepped back. "You see? The boy is mad." Mama Ife did not waste time. She moved to the stranger's side, positioning herself between his trembling body and the rest of the world. "You are safe," she murmured. "No one will hurt you here. I promise. You are safe." The words seemed to reach him through whatever darkness had claimed him. Slowly, his breathing began to even out. His hands dropped from his ears. His eyes, when they opened, were wet with tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing at all." The customer had fled. The villagers kept their distance. But Mama Ife stayed until the trembling stopped, until he was strong enough to stand and return to the simple task that anchored him to reality. The evening she found him crying behind her stall would stay with her forever. She had been humming as she packed up when she heard it, a sound so raw, so broken, that it stopped her in her tracks. She found him in the shadow where the stall met the crumbling wall of an abandoned building. His face was buried in his hands, and he was crying. Not silent tears. Something deeper, something from the very core of his being. Through the sobs, words spilled from him like blood from an open wound. "I didn't mean to fail. I tried. I tried so hard. Please, I'm sorry." He was lost in a memory she could not see. Mama Ife lowered herself to the ground beside him, close enough that he could feel her presence. "I'm here," she said softly. "You are not alone." His head lifted slowly, and his devastated eyes met hers. "I failed them. I was supposed to be strong. I was supposed to protect." "Shh." She reached out and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. For the first time, he did not flinch. He leaned into the contact like a man dying of thirst. "Whatever happened," she said firmly, "you are still here. You survived. And that is not failure. That is strength. You don't understand. You don't know what I don't need to know your past or your name or your story. I just need to know that you are here, right now. And right now, you are safe. You are cared for. You are not alone." He stared at her, trying to comprehend words from a language he had forgotten. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you care? I'm nobody. I'm nothing." "You are a human being," she said, simply. "And that is enough. It will always be enough." The tears came again, quieter this time, like rain after a long drought. She sat with him until the stars came out, her hand on his shoulder, her presence a silent promise that he was not as alone as he believed. The rains came without warning that year, earlier and fiercer than anyone expected. The stranger had not appeared for 3 days. On the 4th morning, she left Adese with a neighbor and set out into the sodden streets. She searched the places she had seen him before, the gutter, the abandoned building, the corners where he seemed safest. Nothing. Just as despair began to set in, she heard it, a cough. Weak, rattling, coming from beneath the collapsed awning of a kiosk that had not survived the storm. She found him there, curled among debris, shivering violently. His skin was burning with fever. His eyes were glazed. "Mama?" he breathed, and it was the first time he had called her that. "I'm sorry. I couldn't come." "Don't talk. Save your strength." She half carried, half dragged him through muddy streets to her small room. Adaizi's eyes went wide, but the child moved aside without complaint. For the next 3 days, Mama Ife fought for his life. She spent her last money on medicine. She boiled water and forced it between his cracked lips. She stayed awake through the nights, pressing cool cloths to his forehead, whispering prayers. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in fever dreams. He called for people whose names she did not know. He begged forgiveness for sins she could not comprehend. "Mama, we have nothing left." Adaisy's voice was small, frightened. They sat in the corner while the stranger slept. The money was gone. The food was nearly gone. "I know, my child. What are we going to do?" Mama Ife looked at her daughter and felt her heart crack. "We are going to trust that we have done the right thing, and that somehow everything will be all right." That night, as Adai slept, and the stranger's breathing finally steadied, Mama Ife allowed herself to cry. But when morning came, she dried her face and went back to work. Because that is what mothers do. If you're watching this right now, I want you to pause. Think about the people who sacrificed for you when you had nothing to give in return. Drop a comment and tell me, who was your Mama Ife? Who fed your soul when you were starving? The stranger recovered slowly, like a flower unfurling after winter. It took nearly a week before he could sit up, another week before he could walk. Through it all, Mama Ife cared for him with quiet determination. Something had changed. The wall behind his eyes had developed cracks. He spoke more now. He helped with chores. He played simple games with Adai, who had slowly warmed to him. And once she saw him smile, not hesitant, a real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his face. "You are getting stronger," she told him one evening. "Soon you will be well enough to leave." He was silent for a long moment. "I don't know where I would go." "Home. Whoever is waiting for you there." His jaw tightened. Pain flickered across his face before disappearing. "I can't go back." "Not yet." "Then stay. Until you are ready." Tears gathered in his eyes. "Why do you keep helping me? Why do you sacrifice so much?" She smiled. "Because someone helped me once. Because my husband taught me that kindness is never wasted. Because I look at you and see my own child, alone, frightened, desperate for someone to believe they are worth saving." She took his hand. "You are worth saving. Whatever has been done to you, you are worth saving." He broke then, sobbing into her shoulder like a child who had finally found his way home. She held him, and something sacred passed between them. Not the bond of blood, but something deeper. The bond of choice, of kindness, of love that asks nothing in return. The morning he disappeared began like any other. But something was different. He moved slower, more deliberate, as if memorizing every moment. He looked at everything, her cooking pots, the stall, the worn broom, with reverence. And she noticed the photograph, torn, clearly only half of a larger image, clutched tightly in his hand. She caught a glimpse, a wealthy family standing before a large house, before he turned away. "You're leaving," she said quietly. He stopped sweeping. His back was to her, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "I have to. I've stayed too long. You have taken nothing I did not freely give." He turned, and the emotion in his eyes nearly knocked the breath from her lungs. "Mama Ife." Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. "I will never forget you, for as long as I live. Then remember that you are strong, that you survived, that someone believes in you completely." Tears streamed down his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught. Instead, he simply turned and walked away. She watched him disappear into the morning crowd until he vanished around a corner. She found the photograph on the ground where he had stood. The other half dropped without realizing. She picked it up. A wealthy family, A grand house, a world so far from her own. She tucked it into her pocket and went back to cooking. Life, as always, went on. What would you have done in Mama Ife's place? Would you have let him go? Would you have chased after him? Drop a comment and tell me what you think. 2 years passed. Mama Ife's struggles did not ease. They intensified. Adis grew taller and hungrier. The landlord grew louder. The market economy shifted. But she endured. Sometimes, late at night, she took out the torn photograph and wondered, where was he now? Was he safe? Did he ever think of her? She never expected to learn the answers. The morning the SUVs arrived, Mama Ife had been arguing with her pot. The rice was not cooking evenly. The firewood was damp. She was muttering under her breath when a Daisy, now 10 years old, called out, "Mama, there's something happening on the road." When Mama Ife looked up and saw the convoy rolling towards her stall, something cold settled in her stomach. A premonition, a memory. The vehicles stopped. Men in suits emerged. They positioned themselves around one SUV in particular. Then he emerged. The billionaire. She did not know him, but she knew him. Knew him in the trembling of his hands, the desperate searching of his eyes, the torn photograph clutched to his chest. "Where is the woman who fed my son?" His eyes swept the scene and landed on her. Something in his expression shattered. "You. It's you." Mama Ife reached into her pocket with trembling fingers and pulled out the photograph she had carried for 2 years, the other half. The billionaire made a sound between a sob and a laugh. He moved toward her, his security parting like water. And then this man of wealth and power did something that made the crowd gasp. He fell to his knees in the dust before her. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. "Thank you. Thank you." The story came out in fragments. His name was Chief Adegoke Okonkwo, one of the wealthiest men in the country. He had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. Tobechukwu, his firstborn. The stranger had never told her his name. Now she knew. Tobechukwu had been 23 when it happened. Driving home one evening, his car was forced off the road. The kidnappers had demanded a ransom that even a billionaire struggled to pay. Negotiations stretched for months. Then one night, something went wrong. "He escaped," Chief Okonkwo said, his voice hollow. "We don't know how. For months we searched. Nothing. It was as if he had ceased to exist." The doctors believed he had experienced a severe dissociative episode. The trauma of kidnapping, the violence, the escape. Too much for his mind. He retreated into himself. Forgot who he was. When we finally found him 6 months ago, he was in a hospital 200 kilometers away. Someone recognized him from a missing person poster. He was thin, barely responsive, but alive. It took months of treatment for memories to return, and with them, one image that appeared again and again. Her face, her kindness, her food. Chief Okonkwo pulled out a sketch done in charcoal, her face drawn over and over by a young man who remembered her before he remembered his own name. "Where is he?" she whispered. "Tobechukwu. Where is he now?" Chief Okonkwo smiled for the first time. "He is here." He gestured toward one of the SUVs. The door opened. She would have recognized him anywhere. He was different, healthier. His cheeks filled out. His skin regained its color. He wore clothes that spoke of care and attention. But his eyes were the same. When he saw her, something in his expression collapsed and rebuilt itself. Mama Ife. Her name on his lips sounded like a homecoming. He moved toward her slowly, then faster, until he was running. When he reached her, he threw his arms around her and held on as if she were the only solid thing in a world made of water. "I found you," he sobbed. "I finally found you." She held him back, this boy who had been a stranger and was now something more. You found yourself, she whispered. That is what matters. The crowd stood in stunned silence. Chief Okonkwo rose, brushing dust from his trousers. He approached Mama Ife and his son. Madam, I owe you a debt I can never repay. You saved my son. First his body, when he was starving. Then his spirit, when everyone else had given up. Mama Ife shook her head. I only did what anyone would do. No, you did what no one else did. Others saw a madman. You saw a human being worthy of love. He produced a small velvet box. Inside, a gold-plated key. This is the key to your new home, fully furnished, in a neighborhood where you will never worry about landlords again. Mama Ife stared. I am also building you a restaurant, a proper one, with a kitchen and staff. Still she stared. There will be a monthly allowance, school fees for your daughter, medical care for both of you, whatever you need for the rest of your life. Tears came, unstoppable. Years of struggle and sacrifice, and wondering if kindness would ever amount to anything. I don't know what to say. Tobechukwu took her hand. Say yes. Let us care for you the way you cared for me. She looked at this young man who had survived horrors she could not imagine, who had clawed his way back partly because of her. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Mama Ife's life transformed with dizzying speed. Within a week, she and Adaze moved into a 3-bedroom house with indoor plumbing, reliable electricity, and a garden where flowers bloomed. Adaze walked through it in a daze. Mama, is this real? Yes, my child, it is real. The restaurant took 3 months. When it opened, with her name painted above the door, people came from everywhere. Not because the food was fancy, it was the same jollof rice she had always made. They came because of the story. The story of a widow who fed a stranger and was rewarded beyond measure. And Mama Ife welcomed them all. She did not change. Despite the money, the house, the restaurant, she remained who she had always been. Humble, warm, ready with a kind word and extra portions for anyone who needed them. Adaze thrived. Best schools, best tutors, every opportunity denied to her mother now laid at her feet. I'm going to be a doctor, she announced one evening. Why medicine? Because I remember watching you care for Tobechukwu. How sick he was. How you nursed him with almost nothing. If you could do that much with so little, imagine what I could do with real training. Mama Ife felt tears prick her eyes. Then you will be a doctor? The best this country has ever seen. Tobechukwu visited often, always with gratitude and easy affection. He went on to establish programs for people experiencing homelessness and mental health crises. He never forgot what it felt like to be invisible. Chief Okonkwo became one of the country's most generous philanthropists. Every time he gave, he thought of Mama Ife. Nearly a year after the SUVs arrived, Tobechukwu came with a package. I brought you something. She unwrapped it to find a photo frame. Inside was a photograph, whole, not torn. A large smiling group, Chief Okonkwo, his wife, his daughters, Tobechukwu, and her. Mama Ife, a daisy beside her, engraved in gold, family. We took this at my father's birthday celebration. Everyone agreed you and a daisy belong in it. Mama Ife stared at her own face, smiling among these wealthy, powerful people who had chosen to call her family. Tobechukwu grew serious. When I was on the streets, when I had forgotten my name and my family, I thought about giving up. Every day, the pain was too much. I didn't see any reason to keep going. His voice trembled. Then you appeared, with your pot of rice and your eyes that looked at me like I was a person. You sat with me when I cried. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. He took her hand. You didn't just feed my body, Mama Ife. You fed my soul. Everything I am now, Everything I will ever be is because of you." Tears fell for both of them. "You saved yourself," she managed. "I just gave you a reason to try." "Then that," he said firmly, "is everything." And so we come to the end. But stories like this never truly end. They ripple outward, touching lives, inspiring kindness, creating waves that spread beyond their original shores. The true legacy is not in money or buildings. It is in the simple truth this story reveals. Kindness is never wasted, even when it seems foolish, even when others mock you, even when you have nothing but scraps and compassion. Kindness matters. It plants seeds that bloom in ways you can never predict. So take this with you. Be kind, always, without reservation, without expectation. Because somewhere out there, someone is hungry. For food, for love, for hope. You might be the only one who sees them. The only one who stops. The only one who cares. And that single act could change everything. If this story touched your heart, I want to hear from you. Who was your own Mama Ife? The person who helped you, fed you, or believed in you when you had nothing? Where are you watching from right now, and what lesson are you taking away from this story? Share this story with someone who is tired, someone who feels invisible, someone who needs to be reminded that kindness still pays. Protect those who sacrifice for you. Honor those who show you kindness. And whenever you can, be someone's Mama Ife. Because that is how we change the world, one act of kindness at a time.